Dear friends, at the end of the previous conference, I said that the apocalyptic genre implies the use of symbolic language. In the case of the Apocalypse of John, this use is systematic. The whole apocalypse is written in symbolic language. It is therefore crucial to understand how this language works in order to understand the apocalypse. This is what we are going to do in this conference. Let us start with the simplest by looking at the meaning of the main symbols we meet in the book of Revelation. First of all, there are symbolic numbers. 4 is the number of the created world because of the 4 cardinal points, but also because of the 4 fundamental elements of the physical world in ancient cosmology. That is, earth, water, air, and fire. 7 is the number expressing completeness and perfection. This is well known. Number 6 is a number expressing imperfection, since it is 7 minus 1. 12 symbolizes the people of God because of the 12 sons of Jacob, who form the 12 tribes that make up the people of Israel, but also because of the 12 apostles of Christ, who form the church. 1,000. This number symbolizes a multitude. 144,000. This number appears twice in chapter 7 and chapter 14. Be careful not to take it literally. That would be forgetting that it is a symbolic number. Its meaning becomes clear when we break it down. 144,000 equals 12 times 12 times 1,000. 12, the people of God, times 12, the people of God who multiply, times 1,000, the people of God who become a multitude. 28, that's 4 times 7, the number of the created world, multiplied by the perfection of number 7. The word lamb, which is one of the main symbols used to represent Christ, appears 28 times in Revelation in relationship with Christ. And it is a symbolic way of saying that Christ the Lamb is destined to reign over the entire universe. 666. This number appears at the end of chapter 13, where it is designated as the number of the beast. Much has been written about it. We will look at it later when the time comes. In the meantime, we can already easily understand that its meaning includes imperfection. 3 times 6. After the numbers, let us look at the symbolic times. 42 months, or 1,260 days. We find this symbolic time in chapter 11, in the episode of the 2 witnesses, and in chapter 12, in the flight of the woman into the desert. It is the same length of time, which represents 3.5 years. To understand its meaning, we need to know that 3.5 years corresponds to the historical duration of the religious persecution of the Jews, unleashed by the Syrian king Antiochus Epiphanes in the 2nd century BC, more precisely from June of 168 to December of 165. This persecution, which is recounted in the Bible in the books of the Maccabees, was the worst religious persecution you can see in the Old Testament. Although the Jews often had to suffer at the hands of their neighbors, the Egyptians, the Philistines, the Assyrians, the Chaldeans, etc., the latter never tried to make them abandon Judaism. Antiochus Epiphanes was the first to try to do so, and he did so in a very violent manner. This is why his persecution became the very type of intense religious persecution. And so 42 months or 1,260 days symbolize a time of religious persecution of God's people. 1,000 years. We have seen that the number 1,000 applied to a group of people symbolically signifies a multitude. Similarly, when applied to a period of time, it signifies a very long duration, almost without end, since it far exceeds the human lifespan. Now let us look at the symbolic colors. White is the color of heaven. In heaven, everyone is dressed in white. White also signifies victory, but a spiritual victory, I might add. And conversely, black signifies death. Red is the color of blood. It signifies spilled blood and therefore violence. The greenish color appears in the description of the fourth horseman in chapter 6. It is the color of a corpse that is beginning to decompose. There are also animal symbols in the book of Revelation, which we will look at in detail when we come across them. We have the lamb, the lion, the eagle, the bull, the dragon or serpent, the bear, the panther, the horse. In the meantime, it's easy to understand that certain animals evoke violence, the lion, the dragon, the bear, while the lamb evokes gentleness. Finally, let us mention a few other symbols we find in Revelation. The crown, symbolizing victory, the diadem, symbolizing sovereignty, the horn, symbolizing power, the eyes, symbolizing knowledge, and so on. After looking at the main symbols of Revelation, let us continue our reflection on symbolic language. I would like to make an important point here. Everything in the Apocalypse of John is written in symbolic language. And this is a crucial point that we must never forget. Indeed, we often have an unconscious tendency to come back to logical language because we are so used to it, especially those of us belonging to the Western world. But every time we interpret something symbolic in a logical way, we no longer understand anything about Revelation. Remember the difficulties of David Lawrence, whom I quoted in the first conference. How is it possible to understand that the four living beings in chapter 4 of the Apocalypse are both in the middle of the throne and around the throne? This seems totally contradictory. In reality, it is contradictory if you interpret it logically, but not if you interpret it symbolically. One of the keys to understanding the symbolic language of Revelation is this: a symbol does not represent a reality, but a particular point of view on reality, an aspect or a function of it. This explains why the same character, Christ, for example, can be represented by different symbols. For example, the lion and the lamb in chapter 5. In reality, an animal cannot be both a lion and a lamb. It is impossible. In Revelation, the lion represents one particular aspect of Christ. He is strong, he is king. While the lamb represents another one. He is gentle, he is innocent, he is a victim offered as a sacrifice. This is why Christ is both a lion and a lamb. Each symbol must therefore be interpreted for itself as if it stood alone, before combining its meaning with that of other symbols. We could take a comparison in the field of painting with a painting by Pablo Picasso, The Red Armchair, exhibited at the Art Institute of Chicago. In this painting, Picasso has painted a woman sitting in a red armchair, hence the name of the painting, The Red Armchair. But half of her face is represented from the front, while the other half is represented from the side. Picasso has therefore superimposed two points of view on this face. In a similar way, the Apocalypse of John often superimposes two symbols representing two particular different points of view. In chapter 13, the beast coming out of the sea is represented as a lion, as a panther, as a bear. In chapter 21, the heavenly Jerusalem is made of gold and crystal. One consequence of this is that a multiplicity of symbols does not necessarily mean that they are different characters or different realities. Often, they are only different points of view on the same reality. Let us also understand that the purpose of symbols is not primarily to represent, but to signify. In fact, some descriptions become very ugly if we try to represent them graphically. Some images are even almost impossible to paint. For example, the four living beings are full of eyes, front and back. Chapter 6, verse 7. Once again, the reader or the listener should not try to picture the scene, but to understand its theological meaning. In the next conference, we will continue our study of the symbolic language of the book of Revelation. I see you soon for the next conference.